A couple months ago, I started this short video about connecting a small computer, a Raspberry Pi, to a solar charge controller. These solar controllers can tell you how much power has gone to the battery and the battery's charge state, how much current the load is using, etc. But they're not internet connected by themselves, so that's why I needed the Raspberry Pi. Today I'm going to follow up on that video describing how I built and used that solar setup. Perhaps we should start with some background first. This diagram depicts a typical grid-connected solar arrangement with the solar panels sending power through an inverter controller thing, which is kind of a hub for the system. That hub can direct power to the battery to charge it, but can also send power to the house to power the loads there. Excess power can also leave this system and go out to the grid. And of course, naturally, power can come in from the grid to power the house. The solar panels and the battery use DC power, while the house and the grid use AC power. One of the functions of that central hub is to convert DC power to AC power. Okay, so how did I get into this? A few years ago, I purchased some solar panels cheap off of Craigslist, but I didn't have a plan for them. I didn't want to get into a grid-tied system, one that is connected to the power grid, because that would entail permits and time and everything else. So time passed and I started to wonder if I could actually use these panels. But many people use these cheap solar controllers to connect to a 12-volt battery for use in an RV or a remote cabin. And the 12-volt thing stuck in my head. Now, like a lot of people, I have landscape lights at my house that I run every night. And well, they run on 12 volts too. So these lights are powered by a conventional transformer that takes in mains power, 120 volts in the US, and then knocks it down to 12 volts. Since it's straightforward to charge this 12-volt battery, and I have daily use of 12-volt lights, I'd figure I'd put these two together. One thing that isn't immediately obvious is that the landscape transformer produces 12 volts AC, while a battery produces 12 volts DC. I won't go into the details for why this works, but suffice it to say that it does help if the LED bulbs you use are for both AC and DC. So again, here's that setup. The solar panels charge the battery during the day, and then at night the battery provides power to those lights. So assembling this is actually pretty simple. Just starting with the solar panel. If you have any of the larger standard panels, the back side of the panel will look just like this with two wires coming out. And those wires terminate in something called an MC4 connector. One will be male and one will be female. So I happen to have a run of wires that ended in these SAE connectors. So I got this adapter, and that's what I ran all the way down to the controller. And by that I mean just running those two wires down to these two ports in the Renogy solar controller. And the battery connection is very similar, just two wires going from the battery up to those ports on the controller. And last but not least, two wires connecting the lights again to that controller, to the load ports on the controller. And then just to connect things together, this last port is the one I was referring to in that other video, which I connected to the Raspberry Pi, and that's what provides me Wi-Fi access. Okay, a couple final bits here. I put the panels and the controller and the battery up on a wooden structure here. Here's the controller. And here's the battery. I do have to tuck some wires in a bit. And then a couple of notes about numbers. I'm not using anywhere near all the power from these panels, but I have two of them, and their maximum current is about 9.5 amps. The controller is 20 amps, so it should be good. Next up is sizing the battery. So you obviously need to know how much power all of your lighting is going to require. One way to do that is to estimate the power requirements by adding up the power for each individual light. Another way is to use a power monitoring tool. I happen to have one of these kilowatt things. And so I was able to plug the transformer into this and measure the power directly. Okay, this is an approximate calculation we can do for the battery capacity. So the required power by the lights is 153 watts. The voltage of both the battery and the lights is 12 volts, and I'm figuring in the winter I'd need it for about 6 hours. The required current is the power divided by the voltage, so that gives us just under 13 amps. And then the battery capacity is how long we have to sustain that number of amps, and so that's the number of hours times that current. So that's just shy of 77 amp hours. And the battery I got is 100 amp hours, so it should be more than adequate. So I did this project mostly for the experience, but You'd think that there should be some cost saving, so let's do the math. So I wrote a Python script to determine the number of hours between sunset and 11 p.m. each day of the year. So that works out to about 1,493 hours annually. And as I mentioned before, the power required is 153 watts. So if you multiply those together, you get the total energy, which is 228,000 watt hours. So you divide that by 1,000, that gives you kilowatt hours, and PG&E charges about 50 cents per kilowatt hour. So you multiply that out, and it's about $114 annually. So I might have missed a decimal in there, but regardless, I just think there's something very cool about collecting the sunshine where you live and converting it to electricity and then using that electricity. So I hope this helps you with your solar project.